that he always seems to have.
Definitely, and I think, he plays so much, one of the most active players just across all the formats in chess. And because of that, there is a level of consistency. He's played all the top players now, lots of match experience, lots of just experience in different formats. And that gives you confidence. And he brings it into those games. And I think even from his perspective, if he's playing someone like Ding in this field,
Hmm.
compared to maybe Lazovic or maybe some of the younger guys, he knows like Ding Ding can blunder, Ding can break. He's been much shakier, and the consistency and the volume, the activity that Hans brings, that's an advantage. He knows it's an advantage. So
Yeah.
expect him to try to take him into deep waters, because he's going to be confident in his form. He's going to be confident in his mouse skills, just just confident across the board. And I think that's why the players that have qualified, there was only a few players that qualified. There's a lot of invited players. Those guys, you know, I don't think they have imposter syndrome here. They know they earned it. They know it might have been it's harder than just getting invited. Like they had to run through the gauntlet to get here, and
Hmm.
um, should bode well in terms of feeling comfortable, feeling warmed up. First game here, we have this very topical Joko piano where I guess White brings that bishop, dark squared bishop out early, provokes g5, and you get this very double-edged play because you got this bishop on a7, bishop on g3, all the pieces are on the board, and Black's ready to at some point play f5 when the king is out of the way.
Hmm. Yeah, the F pawn, and especially this move knight h7, definitely indicates that. You see a lot of maneuvering when it comes to this opening, but I will say it's always been an opening, Eric, that has felt to me like it's quite dangerous looking, but I'm not sure if that's what it feels like to play against at this level for these guys. But for me, and I think for most of the people watching, seeing h5, seeing g5 on the board, and being forced to play a move like h4 here, you got that piercing bishop on a7, and it feels scary.
It definitely is scary. Just these days, players are always looking for imbalances. It's hard to push for an advantage with White, and at least in these positions, it's scary looking. But you know, Black playing h5 and g5, there's some concessions or some long-term squares that White can aim for. And yeah, for the sake of putting pressure on your opponent, not playing necessarily like a Berlin endgame. These are rich positions with weak squares and activity for both colors that modern chess has just fully embraced.
Hmm.
The players are looking for complications and don't mind a bit of risk, because a lot of other openings, it's hard. It's really hard to get any play. Just, and here, all the pawns are on the board. All the pieces are on the board. Can't say that about most openings at this stage. And that means, yeah, we're going to get a nice, exciting, probably first game at some point. White plays d4, puts
Hmm.
pressure on e5. Again, Black would love to play f5 at some point. It's about the timing. But even
Yeah,
if even if
because
those moves don't come easily, f3, that'd be a can
mhm.
opener. Different ideas.
Yeah, it kind of feels like both sides have this idea to push the F pawn, F3 or F5. And now we see something that I'm not sure if Hans had prepared this move D4, or if this is maybe a knee jerk reaction to maybe missing knight G6 or underestimating it. Because look, you're walking in knight G6, you're taking on H4. This looks like something that is easy to miss because maybe it looked like Black was playing for F5. All of a sudden, there's just no defending H4. So Han says, well, I'll play knight e3, I'll play d4, shut that bishop on a7 out. But at the same time, at some point, Eric, you kind of have to count out the pawns. So where do you put your value in this position? Is it on the material, the extra pawn that Ding has, or is it on the fact that the e pawn is loose, that Black's king is a lot more exposed, and White seems to be maybe slightly ahead in development?
I mean, normally speaking, I would be okay losing the H pawn. Hans has lost it for the E pawn. right
Hmm.
now. But there's some things to calculate when it comes to taking on e5. I I don't play these positions that much as white. I must admit you do have to study them pretty deeply, and there is some risk involved. Putting your bishop on your king side, inviting your opponent to push those king side pawns and try to trap it. So I haven't played this too much, but um, I generally would be okay losing that h pawn
Hmm.
if I can win e5. But Hans played knight h to f1. So there
Hmm.
might be some tactics involved as to why you can't take on e5 or why you didn't prefer it. Um, at the same time, um, oh, okay, no, I've, there's a lot going on here in these blitz games, and one thing that um, I think I would say is a feature of Hans's chess more than Ding is he's very practical and he plays a lot. So in a complicated position, you can spend so much time absorbing,
Hmm.
calculating, but he'll often what we're seeing right now. You just played a couple moves instantly, and position. You just have to acknowledge sometimes the position is too rich to figure everything out, and you just have to play fast.
Yeah, look how quickly these moves just came in. That knight went from e3, d5, c7, grabbed a pawn, back to b5, grabbed another pawn. And these were instant decisions, Eric. So as you mentioned, he's not really pausing at all. And, he just took two pawns out of Ding's position. Now we see h4. The idea is maybe that he wants to play g3 in the future. If we see maybe bishop takes on e5, that's going to open up the bishop on b6 on the white king on g1. But the queens are likely to exchange, and currently that extra pawn is the reason that Hans has an advantage.
Yeah, with h4, Ding's really hoping at some point that d4 pawn takes on e5 to open up that diagonal for that dark squared bishop. Play that move g3,
Hmm.
and we might see it maybe even right here. Can you play g3? It might be
Hmm.
temporary, but you do open up that diagonal for the dark square bishop, at least the pin. The d pawn will then be pinned. Super sharp. The players are definitely going for it in the first game.
Yeah,
Um,
because you can play g3 and then trade the queens. There's a future where you trade the queens and then take on d4. Now, Ding has done it sort of in a different order here with pawn takes on d4 first. Maybe we'll end up transposing, but it feels to me like maybe g3 or queen takes on d2 was the maybe more precise move order, but very, very hard to discern.
Very hard to discern. I think White definitely is avoiding the queen trade right now because that knight on h7 is just waiting to spring into action. And so that would just accelerate that process, that knight getting to g5. Even if the queen's off the board, doesn't mean black doesn't have tactical ideas with that h pawn, that g pawn, very close to white's king. So I expect the tension to maintain
Hmm.
and Hans to try to delay that as much as possible. And we see it right now, knight b3. Again, black can play g3, but in all these moments, that dark squared bishop is hanging. So black would love to play g3 while maintaining that dark squared bishop. And here, let's say you play bishop a7, maybe the knight just chases it from knight b5. Okay, so yeah, bishop
Hmm.
e5. Getting rid of the dark squared bishop will at least make things a lot easier for Hans. There's no risk of his bishop being trapped on h2, no more pin. At the same time, material's liquidated here, and when you push those, king side pawns as black, with the queens off the board, it's not as bad in terms of being like, hey, maybe black's king is a little loose, sure, but with the queens off the board, the absence of dark squared bishops, generally that king on g7 should still be okay.
Yeah, and the move knight f5 looks like a great move in general, but the bishop on c4 was hanging. So couldn't just commit with knight f5 and taking the h pawn. After h3, f4, and now Hans, he's kind of posturing up. I think he's a bit happy with his position. You can see the f5 square is available. The white king is going to go to f2. Maybe the rook will slide to the g file. There's always f4 in the future, Eric. So I think if you look at the body language here, Eric, and the board, it feels like Hans is much happier with his game.
Is much happier, I agree. I mean, it's just so cohesive here. Everything's defended. You have two nice pawn chains. H3 can be picked off, but at least Ding, he's up on the clock. So
Hmm.
uh, something in his favor. But yeah, look for that h3 pawn to be a long-term target for white to eventually take and say, hey, I'm up a pawn. Knight h5, preparing knight f4.
Yeah, that was the move. Knight to c4 offers a lot of trades here, but primarily bishop takes f5, knight e5. It feels like you're kind of surviving a little bit better as Ding. The knight wants to make it into f4. So I think this is a bit of an achievement, and maybe that time advantage that he had played into these last couple moves.
I do think it's an achievement, but h3, there's no
Mhm.
fixing that. It's weak
Yep.
for the rest of the game. Ding's job, I think, is to try to find counterplay elsewhere or keep pieces on the board. Like right now, knight d3. Now h3 you can't take because the rook takes d3 and knight f4 check. So Ding is just going to use that pawn, leave it there, not defend. Oh, wait a second. All right.
I mean, this is a incredible.
You can sack and play then rook c2 check.
Yeah, and
Missed the moment.
that is to get king takes h3, knight f4, the same tactic you just pointed out, but nobody in this game saw it with only seconds to spare.
Hans couldn't decide, can I take on h3 with the rooks on the board? He prefers trading before taking because maybe you take on h3 and your king gets in trouble. Some
Hmm.
checks, some ladder mate. But he has won a clean pawn here, and this is an easier position for him to start pre-moving and catching up on the clock. Ding down a
Yep.
pawn. That
Yeah, you
king
can
is
almost just go
looking.
into d7, like the f7 pawn. If you could take that,
Yeah, rook
that's just a
g1. There's
checkmate.
Oh yeah, no, Hans is making big progress. Rook b6 defends b2. The
Yeah.
knight, the knight is almost boxed out.
Yeah, completely at this point. There goes the f pawn. The knight on h8 is complete. That's the worst place you could have a
You don't
knight
need to
on
do
the entire
anything. Just leave it
chessboard.
there. Just leave it
Yeah,
there. But he's just picking up the
exactly.
pawns.
Oh man, yeah, this is going to be game one for Hans Neimann, and obviously he's happy with the result, but I think he had that body